All right, good afternoon or good morning if you're all the way on the West Coast. And welcome. This is Thursday, June 4th, 2020, and it's just over 3 p.m. on the East Coast. So this is the ArcGIS Pro Workshop, and you'll see slightly rebranding of this from seminar series into workshops because we do want to go and emphasize that we want this to be interactive. We want you to have as much say in what we do and what we demonstrate and what we talk about as anything else. We don't want you just sitting there listening to a bunch of slides. We want you to go and talk to us. We want to make sure that you get your questions answered. So let's go real quickly through these slides. They are hosted by both Fairview Industries with Nancy Von Meyer, and I don't see Nancy in here. She's not. I didn't expect her to be here today. But Nancy helped, and she was the one who started this. So I still always give a shout out to Nancy. And then we are Pane Consulting, and we have been doing GIS since, I've actually been doing GIS since 1978, 79, so early stuff. But anyway, if you've been here before you see this, just want to go and refresh everybody's memory about the interface with GoToMeeting. If you don't have a webcam on it, I see that we don't have too many of them, which is good. Where you can see, turn on the webcams and off, whether you want to see just Chris and I or not. Here's the people. You can see a list of everybody that's here. The chat window. If you want to go and communicate, you can type a chat down here. And then secondly, you can go and tell it who to go to. You can send it to everybody or just individual people if you want to communicate privately back and forth. And then finally, if you have any sort of audio issues or any issues, you can set it in the settings area. Again, we wanted this to be interactive. We want this to be an experience that you can learn things and you can have input into here. You have to ask questions. Otherwise, I just ramble, and Chris will tell you and other people that I'll just ramble. Email notices. We do send out bi-weekly email notices on these workshops. So I'm about to send one out here probably the end of this week. Which has the listing, and at the end of them it has a subscription area. So if you get an email or someone passes on to you, make sure you subscribe and tell us what you want. We have slightly changed this in that we've done away with the panda bamboos. By the way, a bamboo is a group of pandas, just so you know. We've done away with those, and so that now if you're subscribed, you get all of them. So on there. And with that, I think we're done with that. So one more thing. I am, again, Frank Conkling, Panda Consulting. Chris is going to be moderating.
How's everybody doing today?
Yep. So Chris is going to be moderating. He's going to be watching the chat window. And if you have any questions, go ahead and direct them to the chat window, and Chris will be looking out for that. And if it's a long question, we'll turn on the audio and you can talk. It looks like we have a small group here today, so that'll be fine. So I saw that Victoria Myers was here today. Is that right, Tori? You are here?
I am here.
You are here. So you said something to me at the last one that we had, and you said, Frank, why don't you tell us about data-driven pages inside of ArcGIS Pro?
Awesome.
I'm going to start with that. All right. This is not going to be a deep dive, but we are going to sort of talk about it because it is a little bit different than it used to be inside of ArcMap. All right.
Awesome.
So let's start with that and just sort of explain what that is. So Map Series is the new branding of it, and it actually allows you to go and create a series of individual layouts that are responsive to whatever content you're going to have in them. All right. But it is different from the way you used to do it. So in order to go and get a map series, the first thing you need is you need a layout. All right. So the first thing you'll do is you'll go to Insert and you'll say you want a layout. All right. And again, this layout can be anything. Let's just go with an Architect D. There is the layout. The layout is nothing more than a blank piece of paper for you to work on. You then need to begin to start inserting elements in here. For example, you want to go and insert a map frame. And by default, it will go and say, okay, here's the default extent of all of your data. Or if you have, this is your current scale, and here's the bookmarks that I have in this project. So let's just go with this current scale here. And then I just go and draw my map frame. And I will go and take and insert it. All right. Pretty simple. Same as it always was. And then I can go in here and do things like go and insert a legend, go and insert a scale bar or a north arrow, put a scale bar in here. You know, this kind of works the same as it always was in that you get an element there. You can right click on that element and look at the properties of it and set, you know, what it is, how all this thing is set up on here, how the scale is set up, whether you use fractional. There's all sorts of properties of these, what the border looks like, placement of it on it. And again, a lot of this corresponds to the way we used to do this in ArcMap. Same sort of thing, same way with the legend. If we click on this, it then gives us the format of the legend and these little tabs. How is it going to fit in here? What colors or symbology is it going to be in here? What placement on it? So again, we usually have those 4 tabs in here. You know, what's going to be in here? What properties are we going to have in here? How are we going to fit it? What's the color or symbology of it? And what's the placement on the overall map? Same thing here. Here's the north arrow. And we have different symbols in here that we can go and put in here. Go down. And we can choose from the symbols that we want. If we want north arrow, do a search on it. And in fact, I'm not seeing anything, am I? Yeah, I'm not going to go in there. But anyway, there it is there. Very similar to what we used to do before. But here's the difference. All right. Now, since we have a layout, and if you'll note where I click on these, this is the map tab, I have a different table of contents in here. On the layout tab, I have my own table of contents, and it tells me, for example, my scale bar, I've got it there and it's unlocked. I can actually lock my scale bar where it's supposed to be. I have a north arrow, a legend, and I have a map frame. On the map frame, here's all of the layers that I have that are going to be displayed in here. So this is the way it controls where it is, what's on there, whether or not it displays things. The next one is what type of elements do I have? I can individually go around to them and look at them. The next tab over here is list my map frame because I can have multiple map frames in here. I can have an index sheet and then I can have a main one, or I can have detail sheets and such. So this allows you to go and list specifically what's on this index sheet or what's on this map frame, and then what's on other map frames if I have those. So it allows me to go and set them up differently. Here's the big one, map series. All right. Without that, you don't have a map series. Well, right now it looks like I have a map series, but actually I don't, because there's nothing here. Well, how do I turn this on? This is the thing this is the key that's hidden in there. So if I right click on map series, right click here, make sure, I thought it was here, maybe it's here. map series, right? I right clicked on that layout, I get a map series. It's enabled or disabled. And then on here, what type of a series do I want? None is the default, and spatial allows me to go and define a spatial map series. For example, what is the map frame that's going to be used? And in this case, here's my map frame. And then what layer do I wish to use for my index layer? An index layer is a series of polygons that are used to define where those pages are going to be. In this case, I'm going to use my PLSS layer here. And then what's the name field? What's the name going to be? What's the sorting field on here? And I can look at optional fields, for example. I can put whether or not there's groupings, whether it groups these into individual ones. I can look at map extent and it'll tell me, okay, how are we going to handle the map extent? If I want to be centered and maintain a certain map extent, I can click here and tell it what it is. I can say get it from a field or clip to that index feature. Right? It used to be that you had to go through some tricks to clip things. Well, now I can say clip it, but make sure I've got a 10% here. All right. And then I can click OK on this. And there we go. Click OK on this. And in fact, it creates my map series. Works pretty much the same, but there's that little key. How do you turn that thing on? It's not obvious. So now I can go down here and I can click on this page and it will pull up that page. And if you note, I told it to clip anything outside of the section is what I did on here. So you're only seeing this one section here at a time. And again, you have the same thing with dynamic text on here. You can tell it what section this is by putting up the page name on here. So again, it works pretty much the same as it used to inside of ArcMap. Again, it used to be called data-driven pages. Now it's called map series on here, but there's other enhancements. Wait, there's more. All right, wait, there's more. So if I go to geoprocessing, I can actually look to my toolbox, and there is now a cartography toolbox. All right, that is specifically set up for map series, which allows you to do things such as calculate adjacent fields so that if you have dynamic text hanging around the edges, you can say automatically calculate what's on the right and the left and the top and the bottom of this, so you can go and put that frame up there. All right, so you can put that dynamic text and say, this is the section to the east here, this is the section to the west, to the north and the south. You can calculate central meridians and parallels if you want that. You can put grid convergence angles in, a UTM. You can calculate a grid index of this, or if you have a specific linear type of features, you can go and have it automatically calculate a strip map. So it can go and calculate a polygon feature class that can go and manage very linear type of things. For example, maybe you're mapping segments of a river. You can tell it to go and take that as your core, and then you tell it, I want my maps to be at a certain scale, and it will break down and create a series of index polygons going along that strip automatically for you. All right. So in 7 minutes, we just talked about map series, what it does. So Victoria, is that what you were looking for? Was that all you needed?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, we didn't. I figured we didn't have to go into depth on this a whole lot because so much of this functionality is the same as it used to be in ArcMap, but there are some keys because the interface is a little bit different than what it used to be inside of ArcMap.
Awesome.
So one of the interesting things is because inside of ArcGIS Pro, you can have multiple layouts. You can then go and create another layout, which might be the cover page. You can create another layer. There are some new tricks in here which are kind of interesting in that you can, I believe it was here, there's a way where you can sell it to only show features that are in my map extent. So if I have subdivisions or something that don't appear in here, it will not show them on the legend. All right. I can also show feature counts in here. So show me the number of counts and put it here. So there's a lot of functionality that inside of ArcMap we used to struggle with all those the dynamic text. Now it's built into this, and it's a lot better. There's a lot of things to explore here on here. But again, things like, again, I'm on the properties of the legend, but there's a lot of options, a lot of functionalities in here. It may be that someday we have to go and do a deep dive on this. Right now, I just want to sort of introduce you to, this is one of the things that's great on here. They have made some really, really nice improvements in here. So if we go to another area here, you'll note my legend changed because I no longer had subdivisions in there. All right. So are there any questions on the map series and some of that functionality that's in there now? So I could go in here and I could go and, let me see if I do it here. I think I go to my share to go to printing on this. Let me see, layout, export this layout, no. Print this layout. Since it is a map series, what's going to happen? Yeah, I haven't looked at this very often, so I probably shouldn't have gone down that rabbit hole as far as how you actually print these things out. But we can explore that at some other time.
Your layout's on the right there. It's set to letter and portrait right now. So.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, number of copies, tiling, output, map series. There we go. How many pages I want to do, what ranges I want to do of them, you know, print them to a file. If I want to go and print them to an individual file, then I tell it what the file name is. By the way, an interesting thing I found with Pro is that they used to have a pull down where you would tell it what type of file it was. And now all you have to do is put the suffix of that registered application on there. So you would say, well, this is a PDF, and boom, it'll do that and go from there. All right. Any other questions? I'm gonna remove this layout from my project right now. If there are no other questions. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any easy way to import the layout from map? Save me a couple hours.
I don't know.
Cool. Okay.
You know what I might do is I might go, if you have a map document in ArcMap, import that map document and see if you get that layout with it. It might get the layout with it. So it might already integrate that in. I think that's, yeah, I would try it. Let's see. It might be, it's worth it at least to look a couple minutes. All right. All right. So I am going to remove this layout from here, and we will go from here. I can close that out. And now go back out to here. Let's go to this, go back to a view. I obviously was way out there before. Oh, this is interesting. I only get that one area that I just trimmed out.
You're still clipped.
I am clipped. Exclude these layers. Current map series extent. Let's. Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm just going to cancel out of here, no changes, and go back in. All right. All right, Brian says it's not possible to convert a map book to a map series in Pro. However, the data-driven pages used to create the map book can be exported to Pro to create a map series. Right, that's kind of what I thought. It actually will bring in those data-driven page settings. Is that correct, Brian? Yeah. All right.
He says correct.
Correct.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian.
Yep. All right. So the question was, and again, I was like, what do we want to explore today? My thought is that one of the things we might explore is the Traverse tool a little bit more. A lot of us I know do a lot of editing and such on here, and that's one of our options. The other option we have is that perhaps we can explore a little bit more about correcting misalignments and things of that sort. So what I would like to do, I'd like to go and just open up real quickly to do a poll. All right. What do you want me to start with today on here? Both. Victoria says both. And Ruben says yes. Traverse or alignments? Let's start with that. Go ahead and put it in the chat window. Correcting alignments. By the way, if you don't vote, you can't be disappointed. All right, so let's go ahead.
Correcting alignments it is.
Correcting alignments. Let me see if I have any bookmarks in here. I have a fix for this.
Oh, Chris says Traverse first, then alignments.
Okay.
Looks like we have more votes for alignments, though.
Yeah, let's start with real simple things. Let's go ahead and I'll create some pseudo misalignments in here. All right. I will go in here and create some polygons. All right, I will create tax parcel polygons. And I'll create in here. On here. All right, just some major misalignments. So depending upon what you've done so far or what sort of data structure you're working with, some of this is fairly easy. Some of this has specific tools for it. For example, I right now am in an ArcGIS parcel fabric, but I'm going to go and treat these because I'm not going to create any records. I'm going to treat these just like plain old polygons and say, well, how do I go and make sure that these things align themselves? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to set this to be map topology under my edit tab. This is what I want to do. I want to use map topology on this. And when I go to modify to say, all right, let's use the, no, not align parcels, not align parcels, align features tool. This is one that this is sort of our go-to for correcting misalignment areas. Now this alignment tool also does things like replacing geometry on it, but for the most part, it will just go ahead and say, let's use this for correcting alignments. So the key here is you want to go and determine a tolerance in here, and I'm just going to put a 5-foot tolerance in here. And then using my simple tools, I'm going to draw a line and say this line here, all right, and this is a 5-foot tolerance. This line here, go ahead and realign all vertices that are within 5 feet of that path that I just drew and bring them in. I'm first going to create this down to 2. All right, just to show it. I'll go back and I'll do it again at 5 to show you one of the problems you might have. So at 2, I have options like almost always you want to go in and fit your shapes to the path. And then on each side, do you want to just go on both sides or one side? And this is pretty advanced. I have sometimes used one side and not the other when I have something close and I don't want to do both sides, but I just want to grab things from one side and move them over. And at the end here, whether or not our buffer is rounded at the end or whether or not it's square. A round buffer will encompass everything that's on the other side. A square buffer will only encompass up to the end of that. Often when we're doing curves, we'll use a square buffer, but in this case, I'm going to keep it at round and go from there. The other thing you want to be aware of is down at the very bottom of this alignment, you have a checkbox that says allow aligning features without a selection. So even though I right now have one polygon selected, I really don't need to have it selected. It will automatically go and drill down through everything that I have turned on and is editable and selectable. So you want to be careful with what you're doing here because you can actually you might have some other layers down here that are outside the polygon, or you may have other layers that you want to go and make sure that they vertically align, that their coordinates are the same. Just be aware of that. I said be careful, just be aware. All right, so when I click on this, it will go and realign that to that location. All right, so that now it took this one edge from here to here and replaced those vertices with that straight path that I drew. So it just eliminated those vertices. If we go in here and undo that again, let's just do that one more time. All right, with 2 feet. Then let's go to edit vertices. Oh, it actually just moved those vertices over to there. All right. There they are now. There they are here. Okay. So that often might be all you really need to do to fill it in. However, you want to be careful with this because here to here, I'm going to take it out to 5 feet. Let's make it 6 feet just so I can be sure. Now notice when I move that buffer out to 6 feet, there's another vertex there. There's another point there. And when I click here, it's going to go and actually, let's go back to edit vertices here. It actually eliminated that vertex there on here. It didn't just move it in there, it eliminated it. Now, because it should not have allowed me to do that because I got rid of a line. Wow. All right. So again, you want to be careful with that because there are certain rules that if I go and eliminate, well, I didn't have a record on. Sorry. I'm thinking to myself as I'm going through why it's doing that. So when I did that and I included that outside, it eliminated all the vertices in there and it redefined everything in there. If I was actually doing this with a record, it would give me an error message saying you're going to be eliminating lines and you can't do that. So I have to be careful with that. The align feature tool is actually very, very nice in that it kind of is a replace and allows you to go, for example, and take polygons that have densified curves and correct them. But there's other things that we can do. For example, I can go in here and I'm going to move back to map topology here. And instead of doing align features, I can do align edge. Now, align edge actually utilizes map topology to go and make sure that when I get in here, if I'm zooming, it's going to take whatever the solid line is and move it to the dashed line. So in this case, I can click here and it will go and move it to that line. Since this doesn't intersect, when I click on here, it should give me an error message because it should say it's eliminating this thing on here. Let's go and edit the vertices here. Let's make it so this thing intersects. All right, now go back to align edge and we can see it again here. When we hover over this line, it shows us that the solid line is going to move to the dashed area. So in this case, that will move there and this will move there. So the align edge tool is actually very nice if you've got gaps or overlaps between elements to allow you to go and align them up perfectly. And it will align it up sort of like autocomplete does, but it goes in and migrates it. So a question that I think somebody should be asking is, what did it do with the vertices of these? And in fact, you can see that it replaced any vertices and added vertices on them as it was going through. All right. So no, let's not do that. Let's just undo here. So are there any issues with or any questions about align edge or align features? Again, we love align features. It's a great tool and it works all the way through. You don't have to go and actually select anything. You draw the one path and it will go and align them all for you. Okay, so the vertices are totally replaced. The vertices are replaced with align edge. All right, basically it creates a new edge for you. Let's sort of experience this one more time. Let's create a couple more in here. All right, so again, this is using map topology when you're doing this. So when I click back here on align edge, it does an evaluation of everything that is in my current drawing extent. And then I can go in here and say, take this and take it, combine it to here. This actually goes over this way. This will go over here. This goes and eliminates itself. This goes to here. This goes to here. Now you'll notice one of the things that I did is I actually can, because of not paying attention or just, however I do it, I can actually delete polygons out of this by using align edge completely. You want to be very careful with it. And one of my suggestions is if you're going to use align edge a lot, make sure that you symbolize the inside of those polygons. Make sure they have a color on them so that you can see when it disappears. From experience, you could be aligning things that are and they're hollow, and you don't recognize when polygons will completely be eliminated out of what they are. You want to be careful with that. Align features isn't quite as bad with that. Again, if we do align features, we can go ahead and draw a line here and say here to here to here. And then let's make it really ridiculous. Maybe
Too much.
Yeah, 75 feet. And it's going to take every vertex within there and go and realign them to fit there. And obviously it won't, because it's deleting a lot of things in here. So that this is actually telling me that it caused a feature geometry to become empty, meaning it is actually deleting some of these things that are in here, and it won't do that.
What if you
But
tell it to only use the tolerance on the right side? Try that.
so in here, if I tell it only do the tolerance on this right side,
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and do that. Again,
Nope.
it's coming
Same
up with
thing.
empty geometry, and I think it's empty geometry for some of this in here. All right. At what point do we stop using that? There you go. I think it was this area here that it was causing issues to it. All right. Again, Align Features is a really nice tool. We've used it a lot on here. And what it actually does is it eliminates the vertices or moves them over depending upon how those features are defined. And it works on lines, polygons, and points. You see that most of these points get eliminated, but let's see if I can go and find a bookmark here. This should give us an error message here. So if I go in here and draw this and say here to here, it gives me the error message saying, nope, you can't do that. If I go in here, no features can be aligned using this method. Let me make sure that I'm on map topology here. Here we go. Again, it's catching it and saying, you're eliminating points in here, you're not going to be able to do this. All right, you want to be careful with that, because that's, again, it won't let you go and just completely remove things in there. We have here bookmark for fix. I think I actually fixed that already. I know in this data set there's a lot of elements in here. Here's a good example though of using that fix alignment to go and fix this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and select these lines and points in here, and I'm going to delete them. Only because if I try to go and do a feature adjustment on, or excuse me, a feature alignment on this, it will not necessarily eliminate those lines. It'll give me errors. So I went and deleted them first. Then I can go and do a line features, draw a curve out between here and here, and do curve fitting here. Say go ahead and align that. I now have a true curve there. If I want to go and look and see, there's a true curve there, there's a true curve there. So I can actually go in here. Again, this is a parcel fabric, and tell it to go ahead and rebuild and create my lines for me. And I actually have lines there now, together with these 2 points on here to prove it. There's my line that it built. All right. So getting things in alignment and cleaning them up is really dependent. You're going to use those two main tools in there. You're going to use the Align Edge tool with Map Topology, and you're going to use Align Features tool when you actually draw the path on there. All right. Or do we have any questions on these two, on any of those? Nope.
None yet.
None. Okay. So let's look at the Traverse tool again. And I'm looking for an example. Okay. I'm going to use the Traverse tool. Now with the Traverse tool, the first thing you're going to want to do is set what types of lines you're going to be creating. And this drop down will only go and show you the lines that are turned on at the moment. Matter of fact, if you notice, it didn't show me any of the PLSS lines because they're all turned off right now. But I can do that, and I can set the starting point of this, and then I can input my bearings. In this case, I want to go and let's do it the old way. North, 90 degrees west. All right. And let me see what this distance is. Okay. And then I can go 500 feet with that. And then I can go, again, I can put in a shortcut and give it the degrees. Matter of fact, let me get the degrees and then a period, number of minutes and number of seconds. I don't need to put those in if it's 0. And then I can tell it what quadrant it's in. So I'm going to go south here for 50 feet. All right. And then I want to go 45 degrees southeast for 400 feet. Then I want to go 90 degrees east for 250 feet. And then I'm going to go back to my closing point. Well, if I were to go and just digitize this, one of the things I need to realize is that it gives me that bearing distance in brackets. Those brackets do not get stored, so that those lines that I created by keying them in, they actually get stored with the individual lines. But the digitized values do not get stored. They have them here. So if I wanted to go, I could actually go in here and click on this. And it says, okay, do you want to go and keep that? I can hit return and it will keep that. Same way, hit return, it will store those. But by default, it doesn't store them unless I actually click into them and say, this is where it is. All right, this is what I want it to be. So on here now, I purposely started this off where it should have been. And I can actually go in here and say, well, just reset my start point to here, and it will go and move all of these points for me. All right, so I can reset that start point at any time while I'm still inputting this. Even though this is a set of lines, it kind of remembers what's in my current traverse and allows me to reset them. All right. If I wish to go and create a new set of lines, I can go in here and say, all right, here's my new set of lines. I'm going to start here and go up here. And in this case, it's supposed to end here. So this would then say, let me go and set my closing location as being here. So this is a closed traverse, and it will go and allow me to go and, oh, I don't have any values in here. There you go. Since I have values in there, it actually will go and adjust between what I had input and where it's actually supposed to be closing, because it is a traverse with a closing position on it. All right. And you'll find that often while you're going and building things that maybe that last point didn't close where it was supposed to. And you can always go and set your closing point to go and join to that final location. Say, for example, I had, let's eliminate this. Let's go back to here. One more. All right, so let's just say I wanted to go and start here, and I have a bearing and distance that says it's supposed to go to here. I could actually input this bearing and distance and say, no, this is actually supposed to go to this location and tell it that it's supposed to close to that location. And you'll find that when you're building subdivisions and you're building lots off of a subdivision boundary, because of the inherent rounding errors inside of there, you'll have to use this quite a bit to go and actually make sure that the record distance is shown there at that location. You do have options though. Rather than using the traverse tool, by the way, you also can go in here. Let me stop there and say, any questions? Am I going too fast on this? Nope. All right. So another thing that I can do is I can take, and not in the traverse tool, but I can go and right click and use my direction and distance here and say, maybe this is 20 degrees southeast. When I hit return on this, it automatically goes and records that. So let's go and do this again. Bearing and distance, I can say 11 degrees southwest and tab here to the distance and say 500 feet. When I do this using those constraints with the right click, I can actually go and input this value and it will store those. So I can actually input the bearing and distance on a line without actually using the traverse file, the traverse elements on here. And I've actually found where this is sometimes handy when I'm building things. I might be building a traverse that has curves in it, and I'm not sure of certain elements on here, so I can do a spiral or a circular curve on here and say, what is my tangent bearing? In this case, my tangent bearing might be 40 degrees southwest. I can do a tab on here, or excuse me, well, a quadrant bearing, and tell it that my radius might be 150 feet, and my arc length or my central angle might be 90 degrees. And you'll note that what it's doing is actually showing me the display of what this curve is going to look like. So in the traverse, when I create a curve, it doesn't show me what that is until after I hit return. I could go back and fix it. But if I use this constraint, which is part of the create lines element on here, I can actually see beforehand what this curve is going to look like and realize, is this going the right way? Or maybe that was supposed to be to the left instead of to the right. And I can hit return and it will go and finish it out for me. All right. So there's a lot of ways to input lines in here. and both with the traverse and just with these constraints. Again, the constraints will allow you to do a direction, so you can actually preset the bearing on here, or the distance. The distance, I can tell it that I wish this to be, I wish this to be 200 feet, and it will constrain this so that it's only 200 feet for me, similar to the constraints that were in ArcMap and how to go and utilize those. Note, the label on this line, however, is pink instead of black. Why is it pink? It's pink because the label is set up over here. Let me go and do this. We're not going to study all of this, but we are going to look at some of it. It actually is saying in here that here's where it actually calculates the azimuths and converts them into degrees, minutes, and seconds. And the validity, it tells me whether or not, let's go up here a little bit more. Distance color, if it's blue, it's for the radius. If it's black, it's for, radius, the distance color is black, radius color is blue, curve parameters are black. Partial curve or partial COGO, it goes and actually provides a magenta. So it depends upon whether, in this case, whether or not the direction field is filled in, whether this is pink or magenta, or whether it is black or blue in here. So if I go in here and I take this, yeah, thank you so much. I guess when I got out of here, it got me out of here and wanted to save it. Sorry. Sorry about that. It just, because I had saved nothing, it's gone on here. Well, let's do this again then. So if I go in here to create and I go down here, here's my tax lines in here. And if I use distance 250, and that 250 is magenta, if I look at the attributes of that, since I do not have a bearing on here, it tells it it's magenta. If I put a bearing in, it doesn't mean if it's a valid bearing or not. As long as there's a bearing in here, it will change it from magenta to blue or magenta to black. And if I have both of the bearing and the distance turned and displayed on here, it will show the bearing in blue, the distance in black. All right. So, by the way, if I input this, it says it is from measurements. All right. If I go in here and do this, and I put in here and 100 feet, it does not set the COGO type in here on here. We haven't talked much about the COGO type yet. The COGO type is set depending upon how you go and input that line. If I go to a traverse now, and I go to tax lines and I say I want to go here, 90 degrees 2 for 200 feet. All right, and I click on off of here and select this. It will say that this line was from measurements because I actually went and input that line in. But if I go in here and do this, and then go back here and say calculate COGO on here. This now says that that information that was stored on there is from geometry, not from input on there. All right. Whole lot of different things we went over here. So what questions do we have here? Are there any questions about the Traverse tool? Again, remember that every time you input a course in the Traverse tool, it is actually going and creating a line. That's all the Traverse tool does anymore is create lines. But every time you hit enter on there, it creates another line, and it's in there. It's stored there on there. Depending upon how you input it, whether or not you go and tax lines here, whether or not you input it here, or whether you put it as relative angles and relative distances. I could say do a deflection by hitting a plus 45, and say deflect 45 degrees here and go for 500 more feet. So again, lots of things you can do on this. You can say go 90 degrees from your previous bearing for 500 feet and go on there. If
Ruben wants to know, sorry, if it's saved to the active layer.
There is no, as you can tell last time, there is no saves right now. I have to actually save it. It is as if you had drawn something, but it doesn't necessarily get saved until you click save here. It is stored in memory. It's still available to you, but until you hit save, it's not actually saved to that file. It's not committed back there to either the service or to the database that it's in, you're working in. Let's talk about that again because we covered that initially. Under options, now you have the ability with editing to go and tell it whether or not you wish to automatically save this, you're saving your things, and whether you want to do it according to an interval of every so many minutes or any number of operations on there. You can tell it, for example, if I say I want to do it every 5 operations, but ask me, do I definitely want to save or not? So I can go back here now, and some of the early things that we were dealing with was, well, how do we do this to do you want to save? I can say no, don't save yet. I'm actually putting in there, do I want to save? No, don't save yet. So I still have that ability. But by the way, it's putting in 1 action, 2 actions, 1 action, 2 action. That's why it's doing it there. So I have the ability to tell it, no, don't save it until I actually am ready to save this. But you just want to be careful. We've found that it just wasn't a good option to go and have it save these edits for us. Rather, we just want to be careful and make sure that we do save when we're ready to commit these changes in here. All right. So what else do we want to talk about today? What questions do we have? What things have I shown you that you have questions about, or what things have I not shown you that you want to talk about today? Everybody's quiet.
Nothing so far.
Nothing. All right. Christopher, can you go over some of those original questions we had to see if any of that will help?
Let me look them up.
Thank you. If not, what we might do is we might go through some of these other elements in here. So let's just go and do this. We could do this for a little bit.
Frank, Victoria wanted to know, how about importing a CAD file?
I don't have a CAD file. But importing a CAD file really is pretty much the same. You bring a CAD file in. Maybe next time we'll look at that. CAD files look a little bit differently in Pro than they do in ArcMap, in ArcGIS than they do in ArcMap. But I don't have a CAD file right now. So we'll look at that
send you
next
one,
time.
and you can feel free to use my data too. You have a copy of it.
Do I?
That's Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That's Wisconsin.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. Sorry about that. It's not synced from my cloud storage. Sorry.
But you can save it, and I can send you a CAD file if you want.
Okay. So let's look at some of these other options in here under here. So we've talked about, let's sort of start going down through this. These have to do with parcels. I will deal with that today. Rotate, scale. Let's just go over this one by one. So this should be create. So when I create a line feature class, I can take and I can move it. Again, this is the anchor now. So if I hold down my shift key and move it around, I can then take it, as long as I'm selecting on that feature, and I can tell it to snap at that point. I can say, go ahead and move it. I have to hit plus. Same way with the anchor or with the rotate. I tell it, hold down my control key, tell it I'm going to rotate it around there. And as long as I click on that feature, it will go and rotate. As soon as I hit plus, it will go and save it. Let's try that again, because maybe I want to snap this to this line. Well, while I'm in a rotate, if I hit S, it will give me a second snapping anchor, and I can take and hold control key down on that and tell it to put it on the line, or actually on the end of the point. And now when I move my cursor over that feature, I can rotate it and say, snap it to that point there, or snap it so it's coincident with the line, and say, go ahead. Let's undo this and do a scale. So with scale, again, I can say scale it from there. And I'm trying to think whether I have that option here. I can scale it up or down to fit within a certain area. And I don't think I have scratch topology now. So there it is there. So those are sort of the standard types of movement on here. Transform again is pretty interesting. You've got to have linkages. Say I want to transform this from this point to here and this point to here. All right, and then I can tell it to do one of 4 types of transformations. I can tell it to do a similarity transform. I can tell it to go and do a rubber sheeting. and these mean a little bit more as it relates to polygons, as far as whether it keeps the overall shape than this. Or I can tell it to go and do a rubber sheeting with nearest neighbor on there and do a transform that way. So it pulls things over and transforms them in that way. So transform, again, is the ability to go and move something and have it snap to certain locations on there. Aligned edge, we saw. Aligned features, we saw. Move to basically allows you to do either a dx, a delta, where you can change it so many feet this way, so many feet this way, or you can change it a direction and distance and say, I want to change this location to be 90 degrees north, and I want it to be moved 50 feet north of where it is now. I can say, go ahead. Actually, that was 90 degrees, so it was east. It went 90 degrees east on there, and it moved it to there. So it allows me to move whatever I've selected and move it a set distance. All right.
Frank, some of the questions we have on this list are, how do I create a catalog pane? How do I set the folder connections? These are things that we haven't touched on yet.
Those are good things to talk about. Got some time here, we can do that. So again, I'm going to do a poll here. Do you want to continue going down the list of the tools here, or do you want to talk about sort of the more basic things, creating folder connections, setting up panes, those sorts of things? Tools or panes?
Tools. Tools.
Tools. Okay. So we'll keep going down the tools. All right. So we've gone over the alignments. Is there any questions about the alignments in here? I mean, they're pretty simple. So what about reshape? Reshape allows you to go and, again, this is edit vertices. And when we have edit vertices, it will take whatever you've selected and allow you to do things such as move this vertex. It allows me to go, for example, and right click in the middle here and add a vertex. Add a vertex. I can also use this tool to go and add and delete if I want to delete them. It actually uses the lasso instead of just a right click on there to go and do that. This is the standard. This is continue this feature on here, and I can do it that way. I like the edit vertices tool. What I don't like is that you have to click off of it for it to stop working. Otherwise, anything you select will automatically be edit features on there. But it's a nice tool. Takes a while to get used to just this, going in and drawing a lasso instead of going and just right clicking and doing it on there. But it's an interesting element on here. Reshape. Reshape allows me to go and draw a path. And that path will then go and reshape whatever I have selected to that path. All right. At 2.5, which is what I'm using here, you actually have to intersect that path. You have to intersect that feature twice for it to go and do this. So for example, I can't just go and do this. It will give me an error message. Instead, I have to go and intersect it twice so it understands, go from here up to there and then down again. All right. You have to intersect it twice. I can tell you that coming up is a new element in the reshape where you may only have to do it once, or it may be able to go and say, okay, now put that here, and it will go reshape it from that point over and do everything there. That is one of the changes that's coming in here. Replace geometry. Replace geometry. It will just basically tell me I can go and do that same sort of thing and just put the new geometry in. It will take whatever the old feature was with the attributes and move it over to the new feature on here, including things like polygons to be able to go and reshape polygons in here. I know I'm going through these pretty quickly, but multi-patch, both multi-patch texture and multi-patch replace. These are three-dimensional objects. We don't use that much, but continue feature, again, it allows you to go and continue that line or continue that whatever feature you have selected on there. Extend and trim. So actually, there's some nice things in here. The best thing is this thing here where it says you can extend or trim without a selection, so that as I come by, if I have this selected, I can go and wherever I go and move my cursor over the end, it will tell me whether or not with a solid line, it's going to extend that line to there. And it's going to extend, if I zoom in here, it's going to extend that line here. I did it the wrong way. I collected on here. I can do it there. All right. So I kind of like the way it works. I kind of like this allow extend or trim without a selection on here. I've gotten used to it as we're going through here more and more. Any questions on that? Nope. Fillet tool. The fillet tool. Let me see if I can do this. Yeah, this is here. I can tell it either by drawing this, or I can tell it put a 50-foot radius in here. And again, as I zoom in, I can tell it which quadrant to put that in to do that. So fillet here and here, and it will should automatically trim that for me.
Brian says, what about a duplicate or a split? I'm sorry, a clip. Duplicate or clip?
Duplicate or clip. Clip's coming up.
Clip's right there.
The clip is coming up. Line intersections. If I have a series of lines, let me go and create some lines here. I should just turn all this other stuff off.
Ruben asks, what's the best tool to deal with slivers or fix them, detect them or fix them, basically?
Detecting's a little bit tougher. You're going to wind up having, basically, you're going to do a selection on there. What we're finding is that if you start looking at the most basic of attribution on there, what's the area of a sliver? Is it, is it a small area that's less than, for example, your normal amount of parcel size? Start looking for those small parcels and then go and find them and see. If you have topology rules, you can also look for things such as, and a sliver doesn't qualify as this, where gaps where you don't have a parcel that's contiguous, that might be a gap on there. But slivers, let's see if I can create something with a sliver on here. Let's turn this other stuff off. Make it easier. All right. So if I create and I create a So here's a classic type of element on here. These are all gaps, even though it looks like they're slivers, but these are gaps. So if I were to go and, well, let's go and do one more thing here. Let's go and create using autocomplete. Let's go and create, there's something underneath there. So it doesn't create autocomplete there. Let's just go and create one. So that's a sliver on here. The issue you're going to have is identifying, is that a valid sliver, or is it something that needs to be merged together or eliminated? All right. So in traditional sense, what you might do is you might say, well, maybe it is a sliver. And again, I got stuff underneath here. It's a sliver. And maybe I also need to put these two and merge them together. So I could go and, where's my merge in here? Clip, divide, merge right here. I could tell it to merge those two together here and then tell it which one to merge it into. Now, interestingly, the merge actually has some functions of, you can merge it by creating a new parcel on top of the others, or you can merge it into an existing parcel and say, I want to merge it into this one. Again, this gets a little complicated as far as whether you're merging it into a new one, which means you're creating something on top of the others and leaving them, or you're merging it and just sort of correcting geometry and getting rid of it. If we do it into an existing one, it will keep this one and preserve those attributes and eliminate this. Basically, it's reshaping the geometry and deleting that other one here. All right, that's one of the options in here. The other thing you can do is on here, I don't want this thing here. Get rid of that. I could also merge it into a new feature and then tell it to get rid of those first ones. All right. So that will merge it and the old one will disappear. Another option is you can go in here and do an align edge. All right, in which case it goes and takes this line and aligns it over to the other one. Oh, it's not going to let me do that. Not going to let me do that on there, so I guess I can't do that either. What else can we do? What other options? I think the merge is probably the only one you're doing. So if for example you have a topology rules will often allow you to go and merge overlaps into other options in there. All right, I think those are sort of the best ways around it. If you've got slivers in here, and this is a sliver, I can easily go in and say, just go ahead and merge that. I can go in here and again, because I've got one there, it's not a gap. It actually is another polygon in here. So I have to go and identify and either remove that or merge it into the adjacent one. All right. Generalized line intersections. I started doing something here with line intersections. Line intersection. So with a line intersection, I can tell it to identify the intersection of those And I can create new lines when extending, or I can just extend those lines for it. So I can tell it to go ahead and do that. The question everybody asks is, well, what happened? And where are the vertices? And let's go and clear that selection and collect them separately. You can see it left the old vertex on there and just extended it. That's all. So it didn't create new ones in there. But line intersection allows you to go and extend lines, extend curves till their intersection by basically adding a new segment onto an existing feature. Generalize allows you to go and generalize this. We normally wouldn't do that. It eliminates vertices in here. Planarize. Planarize. Again, we'll go and get rid of this and allow you to go and intersect all of the lines and create new lines after those intersections. All right. So I now have one line there, I have one line there, one line there, one line there, one line there, and there. So these are just very simple tools that you have in here. Clip allows you to go and take and clip one thing against another. Explode, split. Split actually does have some interesting options in here, because it allows me to just go and interactively click on something to split it, or I can split by feature, where I can tell it I want this thing to split, and then I can tell it to be able to select what it's going to split out of here. So I can tell it to try to split the tax parcel underneath, or the individual lines here to split them. These are already all been split, but it will do that. So again, I can do an interactive split, or I can say, let me identify what polygons or what lines it's going to cut on, as I go and intersect them. Yeah. Thank you, sir. All right. So this has been a real hodgepodge of things that we covered today. I'm going to discard this. All of those. So we covered a map series. We covered some elements of the traverse, different ways to input things in the traverse, ways to input COGO values, what happens when you have full COGOs and partial COGOs. We talked about taking in a single line and having a closed traverse off of that, basically taking what we used to call an open traverse and then closing it to a set closing point. We also looked at some of the alignment tools. We looked at some of the ways to go and realign some of your simple features in here. We started going over some of the tools and went over some of the adjustment tools on them. That's about all I have for today. So the question is, and this is critical, what do you want to go over next month when we do this? As Victoria she spoke up last time and said, hey, let's go over map series or data-driven pages. We can do that. Does anybody have something they want to go and review?
Nothing in the chat.
Nothing. All right. Let's go ahead. Set up topology rules and things like that. Could you please show how to start from the data model? Kathy, can I ask you to explain that a little bit more? How do you create a data, or Kathy, can we unmute you? Are you unmuted yet? Sending unmute request.
She doesn't have a microphone.
Okay. Yeah, we can explore that. We can talk about creating a database and what's involved in that and how to proceed with that. That's a good way to start. And then maybe we can build some topology on here. Kathy, the fabric data model, that's more involved with next week. This is simple features inside of here. So we have the ArcGIS Pro workshops, and then we have the ArcGIS Parcel Fabric workshops. That's next week to go and do that. All right.
Thomas wants to know if we'd be able to go over 3D condos and air rights in the model.
Ooh, again, that's Parcel Fabric, not necessarily Pro, but that's Parcel Fabric. We might have an interesting discussion on that next week. Good idea, Thomas, on that. All right. Anything else? If not, I'm going to stop the recording, and then feel free to stick around if you want for office hours, and we can continue our discussions at that point. All right. Thank you all for showing up, and hopefully we'll see you next month at the ArcGIS Pro Workshop.